surprised that this is one of the first topics on the first day of the Dubai Metaverse Assembly. Real estate in the metaverse. Now, it's often said at the moment that buying land in the metaverse now is similar to buying land in New York 250 years ago. That's the kind of future they see from the space. Now, paying real money for digital items is nothing new. It's been around in the gaming world for a long time. Arguably, some games were maybe one of the first iterations of metaverses, games such as Fortnite. And in this new world, you would hire an architect to design you a building. They would design you an office, a mall maybe, your home, your dream home. But then instead of taking those blueprints to a construction company, you would take them to a team of developers. That is what happens when building in the metaverse. But the ability to buy land that doesn't exist in the real world has certainly attracted some attention, not just amongst individuals trying to get in on the next Bitcoin, but it's also attracted the big names to the scene. We're very lucky to be joined by some of these big names today, as well as one person who is behind these digital scenes. So I'll just welcome them to the stage now. We have Guy Parsonage from PwC. We have Ali Sajwani from DAMAC Properties. Hi. Joe Abi Akel from Majid Al Futtaim. And from the Decentraland Foundation, we have Sam Hamilton. Hi, welcome everyone. So, obviously, throughout the conversation, feel free to chime in with each other. But just to get the ball rolling, I'm going to start with you, Ali, because you come from the world of bricks and mortar, tangible real estate. How is a company such as DAMAC Properties approaching the metaverse?
So, metaverse has been a very loose term recently. People use it for all sorts of things. We decided to go with a very focused approach. So, in DAMAC, we have sales that happen on the ground. We have sales that happen internationally. And when COVID happened, we started an online channel of sales. So we do sell to our customers using Microsoft Teams, using Zoom, etc. And the sales are substantial. We do over $100 million a quarter using that channel. Now, as you appreciate, the conversions are very low because it's not an immersive experience. You're speaking to someone on a Zoom call, and you're still convincing them to buy real estate halfway across the world. So the way we decided to invest in the metaverse is to create digital twins of all of our assets and communities, but very immersive digital twins, such that you can see the villa or apartment that you want to purchase, you look at the views, you pick the finishes, and we take you through the sales process and the sales journey from beginning to end. Once you receive your unit, we're going to allow you to log into these digital communities, and then you can interact with your neighbors, with your fellow community members, in a digital fashion. So that's how we look at the metaverse and how we're trying to utilize the metaverse to further enhance our current business model.
And what if you meet your neighbors and you don't like them? Do you get your money back? Can you swap plots?
You could go anonymous so no one knows who you are, but...
Great. So you're using this as well to create, to enhance the community that already exists within DAMAC Properties.
To enhance the current communities and to enable the future communities so people get a real idea of what's being built before it's being handed over.
And do you accept payment for these properties in cryptocurrency? We
do. So we use an intermediary, which is based out of Abu Dhabi. It's an ADGM listed company. We don't accept any crypto on our books. So they handle the entire transaction and they transfer fiat currency to us for any crypto-related transactions.
Okay. Well, moving from bricks and mortar to blockchains and private keys, I'll bring in Sam here from Decentraland. Now, Decentraland has 90,000 parcels of land.
Just over.
You've been around since 2017.
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit about the community that you have going?
Yeah, actually it's communities now. 5 years ago it was a very small amount of people, maybe a couple of hundred people who were interested in the metaverse. Nobody else wanted to listen or know about it, and obviously over 5 years we've come a long way. What's happening in Decentraland right now is people are splintering off into smaller communities. So you have all the NFT projects, you know, the apes, the mooncats, they all have their own communities, and they're establishing HQs in Decentraland and having meetups and events. You have communities by geography, so we have a really big Chinese community who speak in Chinese and have Chinese events, and that's happening all over the world. And yeah, the community is really growing and getting strong. Obviously, through the times of COVID and lockdown, there was a lot of people looking for social elements but stuck in their house, and Decentraland was well placed to pick up that and help people find people to connect with throughout that whole time.
So there are obviously people buying up plots of land as individuals. How are larger players getting involved, such as governments?
There's governments talking about building embassies at the moment. In fact, some are in production, so that, you know, for smaller countries, building an embassy in every country in the world is very expensive. So having an embassy in the metaverse, where people can apply for a visa or do some of the admin work, that makes a lot of sense and saves a lot of money. Brands buying up plots in Decentraland, but also renting and also taking advantage of the foundation who I work with, which is a non-profit organisation. So we've given a lot of brands free leases just to let them dip their toe in the water and understand what the metaverse is about.
Okay, so you're letting them try before they buy?
Yeah.
Okay, very generous. Well, how much does a plot of land go for example?
Well, we sold them all in 2017, 2018 for $20 a pop. And now I think the cheapest is around 3,500. So you can see speculators got in early, and the increase in value has been astonishing.
And what would you say to the cynics who say that the only reason to buy land in the metaverse is to just sell it on for more money in the future?
I think there's a lot of truth in that. In some ways, you know, the metaverse is hype at the moment. There's a lot of people who see money in it and see ways of making money. It's not really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in building out the experiences and ushering in the new generation of the internet. I think this is way more important than the financial side of it. In fact, in some ways, speculators have made our job more difficult because they outprice the real developers who want to come in and build.
Would you call Decentraland a game?
No. I'd say we're gamifying the internet. I think it's more of a social media. I think it's the next iteration of social media where people have a more human experience. At the moment, I mean, define the metaverse. For some people, we already live in the metaverse. We spend 8-10 hours a day on our phones, scrolling through, whereas the next iteration is a much more human experience. You walk, you talk, you hug, you kiss. You do what real people do to be social.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to bring in Joe now. As I understand, Majid Al Futtaim have some land in Decentraland. So what brought you to make that leap?
Okay, sure. So maybe starting from where we ended the previous question, right? What we're experiencing today with Web3 and the metaverse is not something that's totally new, or it's not a complete revolution. It's actually an evolution of trends that we've been experiencing for years. Obviously, they got accelerated during COVID. And given Majid Al Futtaim is a lifestyle conglomerate, we're in the business of the customer. We always have to keep evolving to meet these ever-evolving needs of the customer, right? So we had to start thinking of what should we do within the metaverse Web3 and how should we build the capabilities and the presence required so we're ready when this starts starts to materialize in 5 to 10 years in terms of value creation. So what we've done is multifold. We looked at the challenges of Web3 and the metaverse, right? Today you have challenges around infrastructure technology. You have challenges around governance, interoperability. But for me, the biggest challenge is education and awareness. And that's where we started. We've built our own, let's say, strategic direction towards Web3 metaverse. And we started with our own employees first, our own colleagues, by training everyone in the organization to the applications of Web3 and the metaverse. So far, we've had trainings with more than 1,000 colleagues, right, across the different regions we operate in. Second, we said we needed to build the right capabilities in-house. So we've set up our own Web3 studio with our own internal talent, from designers to developers to people who are actually proficient with 3D modeling and understand Decentraland, Sandbox, the technical requirements of each. And we started using these services for internal purposes. And now we're going to start looking at how to offer this to our partners, because we're a platform business. We're not only in the business of the end consumer, we also serve other businesses, retailers, tenants, brands. And what we did third is partner. We looked at the right partners. This is not something we can do on our own. So we partnered, for example, with Binance to enable crypto-related applications. And we also partnered with a company called EveryRealm, who actually own land in Decentraland and offer it as a service. They actually offer rental services to retailers or brands who want to experiment with the metaverse. We did the design ourselves. They're doing the development for us to build a mall in the metaverse. We also have experimented with having offices in the metaverse and running meetings for our teams within that space to see how more productive, how more immersive these experiences could be. And last, we started also trying not only to look at the fully virtual type of experiences, similar to what Ali was mentioning, taking our physical experiences and looking at how can we amplify them using Web3 type of technologies. We did an investment in the partnership with Dreamscape, which is a VR startup out of the US. We launched with them in Mall of the Emirates a entertainment-based VR experience, but now we're looking how to take that same technology to apply it to education, to travel, and more importantly, to real estate, right? Creating a virtualization of real estate or these digital twins to allow tenants in our malls or homeowners who are buying from us to visualize their houses, customize them even before they're built.
You mentioned earlier that COVID accelerated your adoption of the metaverse. But, I mean, and any of you can chime in with this. How much do you think COVID accelerated the sort of adoption of the metaverse and exploration into it?
I think, I think it definitely accelerated it, but what it did was put the idea in people's heads that there was, it gave people a reason to go to the metaverse. And once some people started using it, they were just like, yeah, this is for me. And it was a huge acceleration. I mean, it's not something you can say it was lucky, because it was a really bad time for the human race, but we definitely benefited from it.
Is it possible to put a number, guys? Do you think we can put a number on it? If it weren't for COVID, we wouldn't be in this spot for another 5 years?
I think there's two kind of opposing forces. One is that we've taught ourselves that we can spend our time on screen or on devices and actually be productive, where many weren't, and they thought there was a barrier to it. But the other one is that we've spent so much time on the same platforms for so long that we're searching for something new. So it's the clients that I'm spending time with are wanting to explore what's next, because they've done the Zoom team selling, they've done that. They want the next tool, the next iteration, so they're hungry for it. So it's definitely accelerated it. A number, I'm not quite sure.
I think one of the key reasons this entire industry has been on the map is actually the rebranding of Facebook to Meta. I think that was really a large catalyst which brought a lot of eyeballs into the space, where you have one of the biggest companies in the world changing the name of the company and investing heavily in this new domain. It brings in a lot of attention.
Yeah, it was certainly a show of dedication, wasn't it, to change such a household name as Facebook to Meta. Sorry, Sam, go on.
I was just going to say, I think they did that because the momentum was already there. So if they hadn't done that at that point, they would have not been seen as the pioneers, because it was already happening.
True. Guy, let's stick with you now. Let's talk a little bit about commercial benefits, jobs, how this is good for the economy, buying land in the real estate.
Sure. I think the overall benefit, we're starting to see some unbelievable numbers of like $8 to $13 trillion worth of revenue to be generated through these platforms. We see it as this fantastic opportunity, but with an equal amount of risk and challenge. I think we've been talking about some of the risks on your side and trying to understand how do we bridge that gap between awareness and activity and do it in a safe and controlled way. And that's where trying to help clients to come up with practical use cases where we can relate to their current business strategy, what are some of the needs, being able to sell, being able to connect, being able to build brand, and then trying to build a practical use case that can then get into the market very quickly. They can start to build capacity and capability inside their teams, start to understand what it means to interact in 3 dimensions, where they've got IT teams, they've got digital teams, they've got customer teams, they've got brand teams, but they've not had to interact in this way before. But then on the risk side, the other challenge is that you can't just give this to the marketing team and say, go build me a metaverse experience, because we need regulation to be considered, we need tax to be considered, because there is a crypto component or a payment component, which is part of that. And so you're often having to bring a large part of the whole organisation along to understand what are the risks and rewards. Everyone's asking for what's the business case, but because everything is emerging so much, it's very hard to justify it in a traditional business case manner. So we're having to look for the right kind of metrics for that organisation, along with exploration and learning being an important part of it. And then we're also seeing that organisations are then getting into the challenge of what is our strategy, where are we going to be in 3 to 5 years with an emerging collection of technologies. And so we're seeing that the strategies are emerging at the same time as the initial use case and exploration. So making a decision about a practical use case while at the same time looking at the horizon for the next ones and the next ones as you start to build the capability in the organisation.
What are some use cases that you can share with us today?
So we're working across corporates and government institutions at the same time. From a government point of view, we are definitely seeing around the brand building in the initial phase and understanding how to use the technology that can then be shared with the rest of the nation. And we're also seeing around the future of regulation, because these platforms need to be regulated, the various crypto providers need to be regulated. And so how do you then bring together the regulators in a forum which is relevant to what they're trying to regulate, and how do you then also create new ways in which they can communicate and share what's necessary. And then also a huge amount of use cases, and I think we were talking about them there, from a brand point of view, from a new audience point of view, from a new product and digital product point of view. And then the other one that always comes up very quickly with clients when they start looking externally, they then also realise that internally they need to train, they need to onboard, and often those are quite systemised processes that even when they're human-based can be somewhat inhuman because it becomes a bit of a factory sometimes. So these are great opportunities to take this into the metaverse. So PwC has built a campus, an international one, and we've also got territory level ones where we're bringing and onboarding thousands of people in these experiences that we also need them to understand, because it's a big part of our clients' worlds as well.
And is there much difference between public and private?
I believe there's a very large difference, and so often the biggest challenge is around the cyber rules. What are we doing around regulation and data? And so for ourselves, when we built our space in Sandbox, we were looking at the use case around that and the way in which we were sharing data, managing data. So we actually went for a very kind of public version of the data that we would be able to use. We're not capturing any data at all within that, and the only information we're sharing is public information on the public platform. However, when we're looking at our B2B relationships, when we're looking at our training environments, we're doing that within the private environments where we can house and manage the data in a way in which fulfills our traditional compliance challenges.
And what do you say to companies who are considering maybe dabbling in the metaverse?
I say that this is a massive opportunity which is not going away. If you would say to a company now that hadn't touched social media if they were in a commerce environment, had not touched e-commerce. This is exactly the same, but even bigger. The opportunity is significantly larger because of the combination of technologies. And so to build the capability and the understanding and to bring the organisation along is a big effort. And so it's important, I would say, to start realistically, understand you need to move the organisation, but have a longer-term vision.
Mm-hmm. Sam, do you think... Oh, sorry.
I think also what's key for organizations who want to move into the space is set up a separate entity and set up a separate team for it. The talent in the space and the skill set, they tend to be younger people who would not suit or work well with typical corporate culture. So with us, I mean, we set up an entity called D Labs to work on the DAMAC Group Metaverse projects. So we also have resorts coming in the Maldives. We're building the digital twins now. We have projects in London and Miami, and we're building those digital twins as well. And when I was with the team yesterday, they're all young kids. They're between 23 to 28 years old, and they were all frustrated. They said, we want to use our personal computers. We don't want these restrictions on downloads. Every website we go to is blocked by the DAMAC technology team. So, you have to really treat them in a very different way than you would your typical corporate organizations.
Mm. And these places you're building in the Maldives and so on, is that for people to get a taste of what it's like to then go there in real life, or is that people to just visit in the metaverse?
Correct. So what we're doing is, on top of the metaverse platform which we're designing, we're building a loyalty program for our customers. So if you're within certain categories in DAMAC, we have tiers for all of our customers, and depending on which tier you sit in, you get certain benefits. And we're trying to bring that all together. So if you are of a certain tier level and you have certain investments with us, you could be entitled to X amount of nights in Maldives or in some of our projects coming up in the US. And the Metaverse platform will enable you to experience our different products before actually booking and going. So in the Maldives, it's my favorite destination. I go there twice a year. But you become very picky with the resort and which villa you want to book, because there's different views, etc. So this gives people a chance to actually go and discover all the different units in the resort, look at all the different views. You get a real sense of what to expect when you arrive. And it makes that entire booking process for them much easier, and again, much more immersive. So if someone's choosing between, we're building a Mandarin in the Maldives, if someone's choosing between Mandarin and Four Seasons, and you have this immersive experience, where Four Seasons just has a listing page with rooms and different prices, the customer is going to be more inclined to book with you than some of your competition.
Yeah, I mean, I know personally, before going on holiday, I'll sift through hundreds of reviews to see if anyone says like, oh, well, this room's too close to here and it's noisy, or, or this one's got a better view. But what better than going there with a headset and being able to see for yourself?
Sarah, if I may add, the same experience that applies to real estate applies to retail and commerce, right? Today, the whole digital e-commerce experience, if you think about it, obviously it's an advancement versus where we were, but it's still broken in a way. It feels as if it's one-sided, right? The communication is not from both sides. Either it's brands dumping things on you, or it's customers trying to discover and find the information, right? And what the metaverse will bring in terms of application or advancement is the nature that is conversational of that experience. It's gonna make it both ways. It's gonna allow the customer to come, be immersed into the experience that that retailer or brand is gonna be offering, and it's gonna make e-commerce much more seamless, much more effective. And if I'm not mistaken, I read a study from McKinsey that's saying that the metaverse and Web3 industry is going to be around 5 trillion in 2023. Half of that will be an improvement on the current e-commerce that people experience in a way that is already broken and it's going to be improved. Mm.
Just on the retail side, the one challenge I think we have is that metaverse brings us a massive opportunity of creating a new experience, new communities doing new things that they haven't been able to do in the real world. And the use cases that I'm seeing around retail starting to emerge are typically focused on the digital twin solution. So inspired by existing malls that were created for humans that needed to walk around and fulfill gravity. So I challenge the retail world to take advantage of what the platforms provide, go to the hyperreal, think about how humans would like to interact, take advantage of what we're seeing in the public platforms which are being created by children all the way through to corporations. What are those experiences looking like? And then how do we match the brands into those experiences and do something which is gamified, which is unique and original, as opposed to too many real-world examples, I think, are being created right now with then a layer of commerce being put on top, which I don't think takes advantage of the real experience that the platforms can provide.
Mm.
I think there's an interesting point about that, not just about retail, but about the metaverse in general. I feel like it can be as abstract as you want. However, I feel like people need to be grounded in something that they understand and then led to the abstract. You know, we have roads in Decentraland. You can teleport anywhere in Decentraland, but we have roads. And people like to walk down roads and maybe bump into someone they've never met before and do those human things. So, yeah, it can be as abstract as you like, but let's lead people there gradually.
Let's take them somewhere rather than I know what this is, I know how to interact, I have to get onto an escalator, which doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
That's very similar, in fact, to cryptocurrency, where some of the terminology has been made to be very accessible to people. For example, you'd have a wallet.
Yeah.
You don't keep any currency in that wallet. You know, it's your signing device, but people wouldn't understand it if you called it a signing device. So maybe going down that road, what are some of the ways that the metaverse is trying to relate to people? Like you say, for example, more examples like walking down the road. You don't need to walk down the road. What else don't you need to do in Centraland? Like what's the future of what people are going to be doing there?
Actually, I don't think we're going to reinvent the wheel. I think the metaverse is a new medium for storytelling. Like, as the human race, we're a race of storytellers. We've been doing it for thousands of years, and we just keep inventing new ways of doing that. So the human experience is going to continue along the same way. We see people wanting to express their identity, wanting to, you know, show who they are to the world, which is a very human thing. I don't think this is going to change. Okay, so I've got this analogy at the moment that I've been telling people, and people really get it. If you project what's going on with the metaverse onto cinema, go back 100 years, we're in the days of silent movies. We've got decades of innovation ahead of us, and, you know, in movies you had audio, trolleys, Steadicams, CGI graphics. I think a lot of people at the moment want to make that blockbuster movie from now, but we're actually in the days of silent movies. And the experience is going to change so much as we look forward.
I think people need some patience. It reminds me actually of, I heard an anecdote, I wasn't around at the time obviously, but that very first movie of the train coming towards the screen, apparently people in the cinema were terrified and they leapt out of their seats. So, you know, it's normal to be maybe a little scared of new technology.
Yeah. Actually, the first ever train journey in the UK, like 300 years ago, the mayor of the town of Liverpool stood in front of the train and said, "Stop," and he was run over and killed. And it's because, up until then, forms of transport were horses, and you could stand in front and say, "Stop." You know, understanding new technologies can save your life.
Don't get run over. But I'm just going to reference about the use case point of view about human interaction. And so the first thing we often do when we're taking clients through an exploration of what is the relevant use case is to look at real-world examples, auditoriums, meeting spaces, shopping environments. So what are the relevant use cases of how humans interact with each other, interact with product, interact with service? That becomes your template, but then, to my point, how do you elevate it above that? I mean, this building is an amazing example of that. It hasn't been a traditional building which has taken a traditional mold. So how do we do the same thing in the metaverse? We don't need to start with rectangular buildings and then pop them up. We start with what's the interaction model we're trying to create, and then how do we build an amazing experience around it Then how do we gamify it to make people want to keep coming back? And then how do we keep evolving that experience as well? Because we can rebuild something in a flick of a switch, which you can't do in the real world. So how do you take advantage of what you have inside these platforms, these environments, and not be trapped into whether your 12-month build cycle and make sure you're doing something really interesting.
So would you say the only constriction really is space? You buy your plot of land, you have to stay within that
Perceived.
plot. But
that's not even a constriction, because people in our community have built something called the Infinity Engine, which means you're on one parcel of land, but it feels like an eternal world. So
like a holodeck.
yeah, I mean, pretty much. It's incredible. Like when this person first built, we were just like, the whole team were like, how is this? We didn't even understand how it worked, and I hired him. I actually hired him because it was like incredible. But yeah.
Actually, Sarah, a perspective on this. If we keep trying to understand from now all the use cases and application of what the metaverse or Web3 could do, I think that would be a mistake, right? The whole nature of the metaverse and Web3 is it's decentralized, right? It allows for a democratization of content creation, of technology creation. That's the whole premise. So us sitting here, we're going to always think of the art of possible, what we know, and try to see how we can mimic a physical or a current digital experience into a metaverse. And these are starting points. These are very relevant use cases. But the potential of what this could bring is honestly endless. And you can even see it. It's evident when you look at how people are estimating the metaverse, the definition of it, what is Web3, what is the market size. In the past 3 weeks, I've seen like 10 studies, and the numbers go from hundreds of trillions to a couple of billions, and no one knows, right? That's the reality of it. So we need to start with what we know. I think the real message there is experiment, right? Allow your people, as Harry was saying, allow your people to actually innovate outside of the constraints of your current business, and keep experimenting and evolving and looking at who's doing what, right, outside. Bring in the right partners, the right innovators, the right individuals who can bring that out-of-the-box thinking, and then eventually it will pan out, and you're going to see how things will evolve, right?
I think there's a couple of really important points here. There's two kind of metaverses. There's the open metaverse, which you can kind of think of as the internet. You can go on the internet, you can upload whatever you want. You have the freedom, nobody is going to stop you. There's not a company, like if the internet is broken, you can't phone the internet and say, hey, my internet's broken. Whereas there's also a closed internet. There's a lot of companies, like established legacy companies, that are coming into the space, building what's more like a video game. It's a metaverse, but it's really contained. You can't take those assets out of that metaverse and put them in another one. The ecosystem is all closed. So this is an important battle, and for Decentraland, this is the most important thing. Is the internet is kind of broken at the moment. I think most people worldwide feel that it's not what we set out to build 25 years ago, and it needs to be put back on the right direction so that it's not monopolized by a few companies. And the way to do that is decentralization.
Just on that point, I think the concept of it being a battle is maybe a little too harsh, but I think that there are very specific use cases where there's relevance for both. And you need to move an organization from a very centralized and data-controlled environment. You need to teach them how to evolve. They need to evolve themselves, and so you do that often with these private environments where there is control, where they're more comfortable, but they can understand what the opportunities could be on some of the public platforms, which is a decentralized organization for many companies is quite scary. Because they're going to say, what are the controls and where's it going to go? What's the strategy of where it's going to evolve to? Like, you've got to join the community. And so, therefore, I think there is a place for both. And there's a necessity right now to evolve with safer public experiences. So things that I was saying with data and elements that you're allowing people to engage with. And then the more controllable private experiences, because PwC doesn't want to go and do their onboarding of all of their staff in an environment where others can see exactly what we're doing and replicate it. And so we do need private, controllable environments for that.
You can have private spaces inside Decentraland.
You can have private spaces inside a decentralized organization, but you can't guarantee what's happening with all of that data in that decentralized organization. So there are data controls that my organization will insist upon that a decentralized organization cannot provide.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
the control aspects are the biggest consideration. Financial organizations that want to do financial transfers, they want to speak to customers around private details, they're not going to want to do it in a public or perceived private environment in a public platform.
I definitely agree that it's not a zero-sum game. I think with Decentraland, we just want to give people a choice. You know, in the future, if there's all these closed environments and there's one open environment, then at least people can choose whether they want to be the product or they want to use the product.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We've come to the end of our time. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you. And I will just finish by saying that one of the largest public purchases of virtual real estate so far has been well in excess of $4 million. So I think that's clear that it's been taken very seriously and that there is a long way to go before we see how the virtual world is going to affect ours here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.